Welcome to Game Daze Commander. Let's get started. Sam wins the high roll and goes first. Sam draws for turn and plays a forest and passes the turn. Rayy draws and plays a Cabal Stronghold and passes the turn. Dylan draws and plays an island and passes the turn. I draw and play a mountain, tap it, and play a Beamtown Beatstick and pass. Sam draws and plays an island. Sam then plays a Jeweled Lotus. Sam cracks the Jeweled Lotus and plays his commander, Vhal, and passes the turn. Rayy draws and plays a swamp. Then Rayy taps 2 mana and plays a Night's Whisperer, targeting himself, drawing 2 cards and losing 2 life. Rayy discards to hand size, discarding Kokusho and passing to Dylan. Dylan draws and plays an Ancient Tomb, followed by a Lotus Petal. Dylan then taps out, losing 2 life from Ancient Tomb, cracking his Lotus Petal, and plays his commander, Braids. I untap, and at the upkeep, I get a Braids trigger. I put in Sword of Hearth and Home. I draw for turn. I play a Command Beacon for land. I tap a red and cast Rite of Flames. Rite of Flames resolves. I tap Command Beacon and cast Slicer for his more than meets the eye cost. Rayy is the only player open, so I swing Slicer at him, and he takes 3 commander damage. At the end of combat, Slicer will convert. I pass my turn. On Sam's upkeep, he gets Slicer. Braids will trigger, and he puts in Diviner's Wand. Sam plays a forest for turn. Sam swings Slicer at Dylan and Vhal at Rayy. No blocks, Dylan will take 3/4 double strike commander damage, and Rayy will take 2 from Vhal. Sam moves to main phase 2, and will tap 2 mana and play a Moonsilver Key. Moonsilver Key resolves, and Sam ends his turn and passes to Rayy. Rayy untaps, and at the upkeep puts in Junji. Rayy draws and plays a swamp. Rayy moves to combat and attacks Slicer at Sam. Sam declares no blocks and takes the commander damage. Rayy moves to main 2 and casts Blade of Selves. No responses, so Blade of Selves resolves. Rayy then casts Scheming Symmetry. Scheming Symmetry revolves, and Rayy targets Dylan and himself. They each put a card on top of their library. After that, Rayy passes the turn. Dylan untaps, and at the upkeep, he will gain Slicer. Dylan will get a Braids trigger, and he will put in Jin-Gitaxias. Dylan then draws for turn and plays a Rhystic Study. He moves to combat and swings Slicer at Rayy. Dylan moves to end step and draws 7 cards off of Jin-Gitaxias. At the end step, Dylan will discard to hand size, discarding Commander Sphere, an Island, Glasspool Mimic, Teferi Master of Time, and Sphinx of the Second Sun. For my turn, I will untap, and for my Braids trigger, I put in a Mind Stone. I draw for turn. I play a Manifold Key for turn, not paying for Rhystic Study. I then play a Sphere of Resistance, not paying for Rhystic Study. Then I move to combat. I attack Rayy, he declares no blocks and takes 6. I pass the turn to Sam. At the upkeep, Sam will gain Slicer. Sam taps Vhal for 3 colorless mana. Sam will use that colorless mana to crack his Moonsilver Key, searching for an artifact or basic land. Sam searches out an Energy Refractor, adding it to his hand. Sam will tap 3 and cast his Energy Refractor. Rhystic Study will trigger, Sam will not pay for Rhystic Study. Sam moves to combat and will swing Slicer at Dylan. Dylan declares no blocks and takes 6 damage. After damage is calculated, Sam passes his turn to Rayy. Rayy untaps, and at the upkeep, he decides to use his Braid trigger to play a swamp. Rayy will draw for turn. Rayy will play a Thespian Stage. Rayy moves to combat and swings Slicer at Dylan. Dylan declares no blocks and takes 6 commander damage from Slicer. Rayy taps all of his mana, casting Deadly Rollock, targeting Dylan's Jin-Gitaxias, exiling it. Rayy cannot pay for Rhystic Study, so Dylan will draw a card. Rayy passes his turn to Dylan, giving him Slicer at the upkeep. Braids will trigger, and Dylan will put in Galecaster Collosus. Dylan will draw for turn. Dylan plays an island for turn. Dylan taps Ancient Tomb, taking 2 life, and plays a Mind Stone. Dylan moves to combat and attacks Sam with Slicer. Sam declares no blocks and takes 6 commander damage. After that, Dylan passes to me. I untap and draw for turn. I play a Shattered Skull Pass, taking 3 damage to have it come in untapped. I will pay 2 mana to equip Beamtown Beatstick to Slicer. I will tap my land and a Mind Stone to equip Sword of Hearth and Home to Slicer. After that, I will move to combat and attempt to swing at Dylan. Dylan responds by tapping Braids with Galecaster Collosus to bounce Slicer back to my hand. It resolves and my attacks fizzle and my equips fall off. I pass the turn to Sam. Sam untaps and draws for turn. Sam plays an island for turn. Sam taps Vhal for colorless mana. He taps 3 lands and casts Raised by Giants from the command zone and tries to pass. However, Dylan has a Rhystic Study trigger. Dylan draws and has a response. He taps 1 blue and casts an Offer You Can't Refuse. It resolves, and Sam creates 2 treasure tokens off of Offer You Can't Refuse and then passes his turn. Rayy takes his turn, and gets a Braids trigger. At his upkeep, he puts in Viscera Seer. He pays 4 mana to equip Blade of Selves to Gunji. It equips, and Rayy moves to combat, swinging Gunji at Dylan. Blade of Selves is going to trigger Myriad, making 2 Gunjis, which will all die to Legend Roll. On Gunji's death triggers, each opponent will discard 2 cards and lose 2 life. Dylan responds by using Galecaster Collosus to bounce Viscera Seer back to Rayy's hand. After that resolves, Rayy moves to end step, and Dylan will pay 1 mana to crack Mindstone and draw a card. Dylan untaps, and at the upkeep, Dylan gets a Braids trigger, and drew into Thran Dynamo. Dylan taps 5 mana and plays Vesuvan Doppelganger, copying Galecaster Collosus. Dylan forgets about Sphere of Resistance and realizes he needs to pay 1 more mana. He taps an Ancient Tomb, taking 2 life, and with that he passes. I untap and I draw for turn. I tap 3 mana and cast Goldbane Pick and pass the turn. Sam untaps and draws for turn. Then he taps all of his lands, followed by tapping Vhal, sacking a treasure. Then with all that mana he casts Raised by Giants. Ristic Study will trigger, and on the stack, Dylan will tap Galecaster Colossus, bouncing Sam's Vhal. It resolves, and Vhal will go back to Sam's hand, and he passes turn. Rayy untaps, and for his Braids trigger, he puts in Viscera Seer. Rayy moves to draw step, and Dylan will tap his Vesuvan Doppelganger, attempting to bounce back Gunji. Rayy responds by using his Viscera Seer to sacrifice his Gunji, make everyone discard 2 cards and lose 2 life. Rayy scries 1. Vhal is discarded and hits the command zone. Rayy pays 4 mana and casts Fell Stinger. On ETB, Rayy is going to exploit it. Dylan takes 2 damage and scoops. I move to turn and draw, tapping 3 mana and casting Dockside Extortionist, making 4 treasures. Unfortunately, it isn't enough to cast Slicers, so after that, I pass the turn to Sam. Sam untaps and draws, playing an island for turn. He taps his lands and cracks his treasures and casts Vhal. Vhal resolves, and Diviner's Wand will automatically equip to Vhal. With no good top decks and Sphere of Resistance blocking Rayy and I from casting spells, we scoop up, giving the victory to Sam. And that is GG. Well played, Sam.